Hey, greetings, everybody. This is John Morgan with Tim Hargrove, and this is our empowerment podcast. And we have a guest today that we're going to introduce you that we're excited to interview. But first of all, Tim, how you doing, man? You ready to go here?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. This is an exciting day, and I'm looking forward to interviewing our mystery guest, whose name is right there on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, glad
Yep.
you're with us, man.
Yeah, our guest today is David Gonzales, and David. I've known David for over 10 years. I was trying to figure out how many years, but just to keep it safe, 10 plus for sure. David is a serial entrepreneur. He's a social entrepreneur and a philanthropist, and he and his wife have been involved in a lot of great things that have intersected with our lives. He is the co-owner of Bison Oil and Gas and several versions of Bison Oil and Gas. And the newest venture is a business called Stomp Athletic, and it'll be fun to hear a little bit about that. He and his wife have been involved in philanthropy and charitable organizations. He's been on the board of Regents of New Mexico Tech, and is concerned about issues like education and education quality and certain public policy issues. So, man, this guy is kind of like a renaissance man. This guy does it all.
Yeah, and he just promised me a job helping him with this Stomp Athletics just a few minutes ago. Unfortunately, it's not recorded, so I don't have any evidence. But yeah. It's great stuff, and love your family, David. You just have a precious family. And they've been such a blessing in my life there in our time in New Mexico, many times over.
So welcome, David.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me to be part of this. I'm excited.
So you've had an exciting day already, because I know we'll get into talking more about what Stomp Athletic is about, but you've already had an exciting day kind of doing some work in that area. Give us a little flavor of what kind of things you were doing today.
Yeah, definitely. So an exciting morning. I got a call from a friend of mine who I met recently, and he works for the Denver Nuggets, and he called me and said, "Hey, we've got a company that's really interested in looking at your product, a major sports brand." And so he called me and said, "Give me some stuff at 9 a.m. At the Nuggets facility." So I drove there and made sure I was early and sat in the parking lot, dropped off some Stomp mats and some Stomp shoe armor, and gave him a demo, and he's going to ship it in the mail. And man, it fired off the morning, and obviously the timing was interesting. Thank you guys for being flexible, because 9 o'clock was our original start time for this podcast. So I appreciate your flexibility there.
Yeah, no problem. It sounded like exciting stuff. You know when you're on something exciting when you show up early and sit in the parking lot a little bit. You just to be sure you don't screw it up by being late.
That's exactly right. That's right. That's your shot. So, yeah, that was great. So, it's a very exciting morning already.
So I want to walk you through an interview and ask you a number of questions about your life and your career, and just kind of what drives you and how you do certain things. So. The first thing I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to just kind of tell your story. And really, I mean, you came out of your high school days in Farmington, New Mexico, where all three of us lived at one time and where we met each other. And you made a decision to go to a college that had a very difficult, a tough academic reputation. You took a difficult academic major. You went into the oil and gas business, working for other companies. At a certain point, you jumped in with partners and started an oil and gas company, and then you stepped out of that one. You started another one, and have done several like redos of that. And now you are got this new business, which is an athletic equipment business. So without me telling the whole story like I almost did, would you kind of walk us through more of, okay, I was making a decision and here's how it went, so tell us that story.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's funny. I think there's a phase before that is worth telling. So first and so I grew up in Aztec, New Mexico, small town, probably what 5,000 people maybe. And I'll start off with, I had really good parents, and I'm very blessed with the parents I have. They supported me and expected a lot of me, but most importantly, they supported us, and they raised us with a wonderful foundation. But I'll tell you some cool stories. So growing up, I liked math. Math really got my attention, and so it just naturally drew me in from an early age. The funny thing is that you don't know is I almost failed kindergarten. So in fact, I probably did fail, and I didn't know it. That's how oblivious I was. And I think my dad intervened and saved my hide
How do you
somehow.
fail kindergarten?
That's a great question. I was
There's
so
no-
oblivious.
There's
I
no
didn't even know I was
academics really in kindergarten, I remember.
Yeah. Usually that's just the fun time, and somehow I didn't wow the teacher apparently, and my dad had to convince him that I was capable of learning somehow. So he saved my bacon in kindergarten apparently, and then from there, math really got my attention, and my parents just continuously supported me and really grew me in that area. Another kind of cool story is as I was progressing through school, academics were very important to me. Church was important to us, and we grew up that way. But where there were some really interesting pivot points is when I was in middle school, I had a guidance counselor reach out to my parents and say, "Hey, the Colorado School of Mines has the summer program for engineering. You should have your son apply." And this is a testament to my parents. Like all great, wonderful high school and middle school kids, I couldn't wait to go to school over the summer, right? So I didn't fill out the paperwork because I didn't want to go spend the summer doing school. And so my mom was like, "Hey, this is interesting. You need to do it." And so she kind of leaned on me pretty heavy. I filled out all the applications, wrote the essays, and they accepted me. So here I am finishing 8th grade, going into my freshman year, and I go live in Golden, Colorado for 30 days, and I go to school from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. studying engineering. And I loved it.
Really?
Loved
Okay.
it. And it was a springboard for me. So 2 years later, they opened one for high school kids for going into your junior year or going into your senior year. I apply again, and I get in again. And same thing, 30 days studying engineering, and that's where I fell in love with petroleum engineering. But one cool thing is we had a family, a friend of the family that actually ended up marrying into the family who was an engineer, who was a huge influence. His name's Mike Kachatrian. He really supported me at the School of Mines. He graduated from there, and in fact, he bought me my first TI-83 calculator. So I was a senior in high school doing calculus with this probably $3 calculator that's solar powered. And he's like, "What are you doing?" So he buys me this TI-83 calculator, and boom, life gets good. So anyway, very blessed in my life. So that's kind of an interesting story. So then what that turned into was a cool opportunity. I was presenting to the Aztec High School school board on something. I was on some committee for improving the school. I don't even remember it. But I was presenting to the high school. In the middle of our presentation, our principal at the time, Miss Walters, interrupts me and says, "Excuse me, what are you going to school for?" And I'm like, "Man, I kind of want to do engineering." She said, "What kind?" I said, "I'm thinking petroleum." She said, "Get me a resume tomorrow. My dear friend is the chief engineer at Marion Oil and Gas, and he has a program for kids to learn engineering." So I get her a resume. She sends it to him and says, "Well, the program currently is only open for, Farmington students because that's where their business is." And so she tells me, "Write him a letter." So I write him a letter and ask him to please open it up to our high school. He opens it up to every high school in the area. And they accept me. So here I am, senior year. I drive to Farmington. I was at 13 miles every morning. I'm sorry, not every morning, 2 times a week. And I do this class before high school starts, like 6 a.m. to 6:45. Then I drive back to Aztec, and that got me going in oil and gas. And so fast forward, I start college. I go to New Mexico Tech, and this is an interesting part. I liked sports in high school, so I had to go to a school that didn't have distractions, and New Mexico Tech was it. There were no distractions there, and I knew that, and so I went there.
That campus, that was, and just for a side note, 2 of my sons went to that same school, and that's got to be the nerdiest. That's got to be the nerdiest place in the world.
Oh, It is the highest concentration of intellect. It was intimidating. But I'll tell you my favorite part, besides it being a good school, is if you played any sports in high school, you were a starter in every intramural sport. So I love that. I was a
Yeah.
starter in sports I hadn't played since middle school, and I loved it. Great school, wonderful school, and so that kind of got me on the journey of engineering. From that point, I interviewed with Burlington Resources. Kind of a cool story. I missed the recruiting window because I didn't know about it. So what I did over Christmas break is I called them and I went to their office and I took a resume and I effectively wore them down until somebody would go to lunch with me.
Good.
And somehow I ended up with an internship, and my sales pitch was kind of cool. I had to acknowledge I missed the recruiting window. I just wanted a shot, and so I told them, like, look, I'll work for free. I just want a shot, and they ended up paying me, and so I landed a job, and that just kind of set my career on fire right there. Burlington was a wonderful place, and right in my hometown. And that springboarded to kind of oil and gas. And so those are the early things that I kind of thought would be important to highlight, that there was a trail building up to all this.
Tim, his academic career kind of sounds like yours.
Yeah. No, I wasn't that motivated at that young age as you were, David. That's pretty amazing that you would have that sense of direction, right? At such a young age. What a gift.
Oh yeah.
You know, I got a sense of direction pretty early, but I was already out of high school. And so you had it, I mean, from middle school and then high school. What a cool thing. I mean, I really sense the hand of God leading you in this direction.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, you know, I was very fortunate. I had some very big influences, not just alongside my parents, but I had a wrestling coach that has become a dear friend of mine, and I really look up to him. His name's Herb Stinson, and he changed my life. He did this thing that was really cool. In our wrestling locker room, he had a mirror in there, and he called it the challenge mirror. And what you did, you'd come out of practice and you'd look in the mirror, look yourself in the mirror, and you'd ask yourself this question: did I give it my all today? And the decision point was, you can't lie to yourself, right? And so it didn't matter what anybody else thought. And you look in the mirror, and if you said, I didn't, then his statement was, well, then do something about it. So there were days we'd come in the locker room, I'd look in the mirror, and I'd be like, man, I kind of hot dogged it today. So I'd go back up into the wrestling room, and I'd do more drills, and everybody did. But that comes back into play in my life way down the road, where I had a few moments of truth where I'd be in there brushing my teeth, combing my hair, and I'd look in the mirror and I'd have this just moment of truth that there's several times, and it really changed my ability to be honest with myself. But anyway, just, very blessed to have those things in my life. Very blessed.
Very cool. Okay. So have we graduated college yet? And
So I graduated with a degree in petroleum engineering,
right.
And I was proud. I did it in 4 years, which was a hustle. My junior year is when I realized I was not on pace for 4 years, so I had to take 22 hours, which was honestly good for me. I had no time for anything that I didn't need to have time for,
Right.
So it was great. Graduated college, got my first job with Burlington Resources. They hired me. They actually gave me an offer before my senior year, and so all I had to do was finish and fulfill my obligations, and started for Burlington, and then they sold, and I ended up taking a job. It was my first step into private business with Resolute Natural Resources. Great company, and there was some downside though. I had to go places where nobody else wants to go. I had to take a job in Aneth, Utah, and I drove 90 miles to work. We had this rotation schedule, so 2 weeks on, 1 week off. 90 miles every day. I'd leave the house at 5 a.m. Wow. Hands-on engineering, really paid my dues. I paid my dues there. But I'll tell you what, I developed a very strong appreciation for the hands-on doers in the field. And we became very close. And it ended up ultimately shaping my ability to, what I would say, manage a team, because I understand where the value comes from. Yeah. And these guys work hard, and it's cold out there, and they still show up. So it really shaped my life again. And then from there, I kind of called it.
One of the things that I've learned is that a lot of times the direct hands out in the field do not like engineers, because most engineers come off like real jerks. So if you had the ability to touch their humanity and share a little humanity with them and how you were working with them, I think that's a valuable lesson in itself.
Oh yeah, and look, they broke me in. I mean, there was definitely the tension of they played a lot of tricks on me, and they got me on a few of them, and yeah, there's but it's part of the journey, and I loved it, and to this day, still keep in touch with several of my operators out there, and
Wow.
just became friends of mine, and so yeah, a great opportunity for me to get a reality check of how oil is really produced. That's the truth. Because I was out there every day. That kind of created my opportunity to go back to Houston. So there's two places I swore I would never work in the oil and gas space. One was the Middle East, and the other was Houston. And my next job, I wanted corporate experience. So my vision was, I want to master the skill, and then I want to learn how to manage it. So I finally get an opportunity, and it happens to be in Houston. So some former Burlington guys were GMs at Lynn, and they remembered the Burlington brand. They gave me an opportunity. It was interesting, though, because it was the exact job I wanted, but it was a 30% pay cut. And that was a challenging moment, and I took it because I really wanted to focus on the vision, and I knew I needed it. And so I had to keep the belt pretty tight and move to Houston and figure it out, which was great for me. That was the hardest job I've ever had. And before that, I used to joke with my wife. I tell her I'm a machine. I can do anything. And by the end of that journey, I was not a machine, and I needed sleep. And that was a tough part of life. I mean, I'd go to work at 6 a.m., get home at 6 p.m., and then I was moonlighting running a consulting company, and that's kind of where the magic happened, honestly. My today business partner had his own company, and he was moonlighting a mineral company, and we connected and joined forces and started our own venture together buying minerals. And then that turned into ultimately the first company we ever started, which it was another gentleman at Lynn. The three of us got together and formed our first company. And we went back to our hometown in Farmington, New Mexico, launched our first company, the three of us. And it was a huge success. We drilled some boomer oil wells, and we ultimately sold. And that was the first success story in the private business side. And from there, my current business partner, him and I, after we sold our San Juan company, we formed Bison Oil and Gas here in Denver. And kind of the rest is a little bit history. We formed Bison Oil and Gas 1 and built and sold it. And then we formed Bison 2, and we sold that 2 months ago. And now we're drilling ahead for Bison 3. So the adventure's been fast. It's been real quick. So that kind of, that really kind of snapshot of everything, how it just rolled forward. And then the funny thing is the last bit of that is in between Bison 1 and 2, I'll say the term loosely, there was some downtime. And that's when we launched Stomp Athletics. I had some downtime and thought, you know what? This idea's been in my mind for 10 years. Let's see what happens. And,
Sure.
and here we are running Stomp Athletics as well. So kind of a cool story there.
So explain to us, in Stomp Athletics, what is it? What do you produce? What do you do?
Yeah, great question. So Stomp Athletics has two key products. I've got a utility patent, actually several utility patents, and a design patent on a product I call shoe armor. The second one is a mat that kind of, if you watch basketball, they all step on those sticky mats. Well, I've created something that gets rid of that. Or honestly, it doesn't have to get rid of it. They can work parallel. But mine removes the dust off your sneakers, both products, and is reusable. So I've got one right here. I made some really cool ones.
Yeah,
There was a tournament called the
Cool,
Native
yeah.
All West 100. I made a custom Stomp shoe arm for them, and it sold like hotcakes. Check this out.
Okay.
So goes on the sneakers. So I made this. You guys will probably recognize this. Being in the
yeah.
Four Corners. I made this
Yeah.
for the Native 100 All West. Kind of
Wow.
cool.
I bet that was a huge hit because anybody who's been around Indian country knows that res ball. I mean, that's the thing on the reservation. So to have a product like that that's got the Native American type symbols, I bet they were crazy about that.
Oh, it was a hit, and you know what? It was so fun. We made a cool video out of it. They had a dunk contest, and I mean, these kids can play ball. They can play ball. Super fun.
So to clarify, excuse me, what you do is you take your other foot and you wipe the bottom of your shoe on the opposite foot, and it resets your shoe so there's no dust and you get great grip. And then you do the same thing with the other shoe at the top, right?
That's exactly right. So this goes over the top of the shoe. You swipe one foot across the other and it takes the dust off, but you can do it on the court. And what that replaces is the habit is kids wipe their sneakers with their hands, and then they get that stuff on their fingers, so they lick their fingers. It's a bad habit, and so we fixed that. And so now, and it's funny, the parents are like, stop licking your fingers. And so, but we fixed that, and so so the shoe warmer solves that, and it looks cool. And then the mat keeps people from putting wet towels on the floor. Like, when I was in high school, if the janitor saw us with a wet towel on the floor, he'd just lose it. You tell us, this is a brand new floor. Guess what water does to my brand new floor? It destroys it. So, just really the crux of any business is, does it solve a problem? And we think so. We patented it. And then the other part is it cool? And, we're on our mission now to launch. I mean, we launched the company officially in early February. So that's when the website went live. And so, kind of onward and upward.
Well, I mean, and I can see it with professional logos and college logos and high schools getting them, for their teams, and then in sports stores. I mean, I think the thing's going to go nuts. So it's going to be a ton of fun to see how this thing goes.
Oh yeah. In fact, I just got an approval letter from CSU to make them a mat. Now there's some restrictions, right? Like, it's just to make them a mat. I can't cruise around with their logo or anything, but the cool thing is I'm in the process of getting them a mat made, and I should say some mats made for their gym. So, very early, but it's cool. You're right. I think the colleges are going to embrace it, and it's going to take off.
Will their mat have their logo on it?
What was the question?
Will their mat have their logo on it?
Yes, it will have the Ram. Yep. Yeah. It'll have the Ram on their mats.
Very cool.
Yeah. Can I give you a quick endorsement on your product? I wanted to tell our listeners today, I have not missed a single dunk since I started using your product on my basketball shoes. I'm 100% that I have never missed a dunk. How is that for an endorsement by Tim Hargrove?
There you go. That's great. You just let us know when you attempt your first dunk.
Yeah. Oh, you picked that up. Okay.
Yeah.
You're a very smart guy.
Good stuff.
So David, at a couple of places, I've heard you give all or parts of a talk, sometimes to students or to others, where you talk about the idea that we all have a brand, and you just talked about kind of being intentional about knowing and managing your personal brand. Would you share a couple of your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I've learned along the way is that opportunity comes by way of a person being who they say they are and having good values. And my life has just been significantly better once I've come to mature to the point of understanding the significance of that. And so, I had a manager at Burlington, my first manager, his name's Rod Stanfield, and he was phenomenal, an extremely strict manager, but wonderful for me. And he told me once upon a time, he says, who you are on the court better be who you are off the court, because I'm not in the business of guessing. And I thought, man, that got my attention, and I've lived by that. So really appreciate that guidance early in my life. But, what that ultimately meant to me was, it doesn't matter how talented you are if you don't have good values. And I'll give a perfect example. There's a finance whiz that his name's Bernie Madoff that I would never hire to manage my finances, right? He defrauded some people, and so he's talented, he's sharp, but he's never going to do my taxes, he's never going to do my finances because character supersedes talent, and that's real. And nobody will do business with you if you don't have the right character, not twice. And so that's part of the brand. But the other part is simple things like giving guidance, like guidance I wish I would have had. You know, social media is dangerous. And early in time, you think you can post whatever suits your age, but ultimately that can hurt you. And so you've got to build a brand of who you are, and don't lose your way. And so I see kids that post stuff on their social media that just, it would kill their job opportunity. In fact, when I was on a search for a CFO, one of our top 2 candidates, I checked their social media, and the one that was the lead candidate, I wrote him off after reading through his social media because I don't want him to make himself or our company famous the way he was doing it. I was very disappointed in the stuff that he put on social media. And so all that to be said, managing your brand is significant. And I think part of it is responsiveness, good fair dealings, being who you say you are. I mean, I've got so many stories there, but I'll tell you one that in San Juan that really got my attention is you got to treat people right. And it's a slippery slope of being a strong negotiator and taking advantage of people. It is very difficult, not because of bad intentions. It's just difficult. You know, my job is to do the best I can for my company with boundaries, and I found those boundaries. And the one that really hit home for me was when the very first company we started, I was trying to negotiate water hauling costs down, and I was dealing with somebody who owned their own business, 2 young guys, or relatively young, owned their own water hauling business. I did a bid per barrel, and I assumed they knew the numbers better than I did, and I worked them, and I I negotiated so hard that after 2.5, 3 months, one of the guys called me and says, "Hey man, I just want to give you a heads up, we're closing the doors. We did a look back and we're not profitable, and our lead investor just doesn't want to put more money in." And I put him out of business. And maybe it wasn't just me, but I take a lot of the blame, and that wasn't the goal, but it got my attention. So fast forward, I got to go find a new water hauling company, and so I did, and I found a lady. Her name was Terry, just the sweetest lady. I did a bid per barrel again, and she came in lower than the previous company that just went out of business. So I called her and said, I don't think you'll make money with this bid. And we talked, and she said, "No, I'm pretty comfortable." I said, "I think you need to go back, run your numbers, and call me." So she did. She called me back, and she raised her price by almost a factor of 2. And she said, "You're right, I did a lot more analytics." And I said, "Why don't we test this for a month, and if it works, we'll stick to it. If not, let's talk again." And to this day, I could call her and she would remember me, but I remember her. And I learned a lesson that I probably could have got a win for a month or 2, or saved our company $20,000 a month. Yeah. But that just wasn't right. And I'll never forget those moments. So that goes back to your brand, right? I'm not here to leave a wake of dead bodies by building a company. It's just not the right thing to do.
That's a great point.
Wow.
Yeah, you just said you don't build a company by going over other people's dead bodies and negotiate so hard that you ruin their business. I mean, what is fair is fair. Yep. And kind of one of the ways the Bible says it is that the workman is worthy of his hire. And so you recognize things cost what they cost. Yeah. And fair is fair, and there's a certain cost to getting things done properly. Yeah. And when you're trying to undercut that, you're that's too much. You're cutting down to the bone, and you're going to kill something or somebody along the way. Tim, I know that's got to relate to you when you hear him talking about that.
Oh man. So listen, I love your mindset. Okay, David, in that one, you're driven by the values that you were raised with, the values that you know are right. And you set yourself up by having this mindset. You have long-term success rather than short-term success. And I think a lot of people really forfeit their long-term success by the things you just talked about, not managing their brand identity, not really focusing on building their character, but also the way they treat other people. You become known in business by the way you treat other people. And, ultimately, I don't know anyone who has success in a people oriented business that hasn't learned the art of treating people great. And so, so thanks for sharing that story, and that I think there's an abundance mindset built in there also as a part of the way you negotiate that's
Yeah.
so powerful.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Hey, David, let me ask you to segue into another story that I really like the story because I was in the middle of hearing how it was going in the early days, and then when I learned how it turned out, I was a little bit shocked. But when you were going between Bison 2 and Bison 3, part of that process is that you were negotiating with an older farmer guy in Colorado that had some real strategic property for oil and gas development, and the majors had been working him forever to try to get a deal, and he wouldn't work with them, and you went in there and you basically had him won over. And then when I checked with you, I don't know, half a year later, you're like, no, it didn't work out. And when you explain why and how, I was like, okay, that's just another picture of values, living by your values. Would you kind of frame up that story? What was that?
Yeah, no, it was a very interesting deal, and this guy's known throughout Colorado as being tough, and not just tough, but impossible. And we met with him and spent several weeks, and it was pretty much an open book. I mean, our pitch to him is, there's nothing to hide here. I'm gonna show you the finances. I'm gonna show you the maps. I'm gonna show you the design. I'm gonna show you. We went with him with a full pitch, a business pitch, and he liked us. I mean, he shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "I'll treat you fair." And he shook our hands and looked us in the eye and said, "My word is my bond." And we see the good in people, and so we carried forward. We got the deal to basically sign ready. We found him one of the best attorneys in the country to represent him, and he's a bulldog. And we did all that, and we put the deal together.
And would you mind again saying, because you told me, what did he stand to make if he were to go into this deal with you?
It's interesting. I think he could have made, if I was to put some bookends on there, on the low case, he could have made easily $20 million, and a high case, maybe $100 million. And the deal in its entirety had a value to whoever ultimately ran with it to develop it, somewhere in the 750 million range, maybe more in today's oil price. So it was a blockbuster opportunity. And, we show the playbook, and he's all excited, and we get documents ready. We spend probably $100,000 with of our own expenses and attorney fees, and we're all excited, thinking, wow, we might have pulled off the impossible. And then he, probably a week before our expected, signing date, we get a call from a new attorney he engaged that said, "I've been hired by him, and I was advised to call you and say the deal's off." And what we learned is he took our playbook and all the paperwork and all everything we gave him, and our understanding was shopped it around and was going to do it himself. So he tried to run with the deal himself, and to me it sounds like it fell apart. And my understanding is that the deal died. It's a lot of work, building an entire company is not as easy as it sounds, even though you show people the slides and the cheat sheets. But he ultimately, in my opinion, I don't think he dealt in good faith. And that's my opinion, and maybe there's something he didn't like, but from my perspective, ultimately, it was a large prize, a life-changing prize for everyone. And what it boiled down to is, when that deal died with us, and then ultimately sounds like it died with the other parties that were courting him, when that came back around to us, our answers were not interested anymore.
In other words, they came back and asked you, "Can we get back on board with you?"
Effectively, they danced around it so they don't show their cards. But yes, ultimately it came back around, and we're just not interested, and we're done. And and I'll tell you, I'll be honest, it's tempting. It's tempting to say, well, maybe, but you know what?
That's a lot of bread. That's a lot of bread. And so you're going to say no. Why?
That's exactly right. Because you can't do business with unethical people, and you can't do business. You just can't do business in that manner. And that's my opinion. And maybe things will change. You can put it in a contract, whatever. But you always have the risk of contract disputes going forward.
Right.
And for me, we have enough opportunity, and we have too much purpose to spend it there. And maybe we just walk away from that, but you know what? We'll focus on things that matter, and that's okay with me. Yeah. And it's not always about putting points on the board. Right. There's more to life than that. So in my opinion, we draw a firm line that we can't do business with unethical people, and we won't. We will not. And that's a good example. That's a big pie, but it's just not for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So let me ask you this. You know what we do. Tim and I were pastors in your life at one point when we lived together in New Mexico, and now we're leading this nonprofit, People Prosper International, and kind of some of the thematic teaching of our life is that God has a purpose for your life, and that really the core principles of economic empowerment are rooted in the Bible, and one of those principles is that God created us in His image. God's the creator of all things. He's the capital T, capital C creator. But He created us in His image that we are to be creators also, and creators of value. And it's where money is born is when you create value, when you create a product, a service, a solution. And you sat around us and heard some of that teaching. And would you mind commenting on what kind of effect or influence, if any, that had on your thinking?
Yeah. So, I mean, you may not know this directly, but PPI, and even before PPI, when you were just teaching at the church, spoke very heavily to me. That was a point of my life that I was very immature in the business realm, meaning I didn't have a lot of experience. And I will tell you specifically a few things that got my attention, and you actually taught a sermon on a few of these, and I may misspeak, so correct me, but you covered a sermon on never being burdened by the yokes of slavery, and the biblical teaching of leaving your comfort zone, leaving your land, and journeying into the promised land to fulfill your abilities and to take up your mat and walk. And all these were a series of teachings you did, and they resonated with me. And it really, not only at the time, this was a time of my life where I was developing my own personal conviction. So going through the motion of going to church is different than having a personal conviction. This was in a phase of my life where I was seeking direction. I was open to trying to figure out what can I do. I had visions of what I wanted, but I didn't have everything. This spoke very heavily to me. And I will tell you one of the most significant things here that changed my life. I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, it is a conviction of mine. You'll never change my mind. So when I first learned about these teachings, it gave me the confidence to venture out and form a business. And I went to my wife, the very first business we had. I would come back to Farmington and listen to your sermons, and we watched them online. So when I was in Houston, I still watched them online. And we had an opportunity to start a business, which meant at the time I had to invest my life savings, and I had to quit my job, and my wife was still in college, and we had a mortgage payment. And so I went to my wife and I said, hey, we have this opportunity, but we have to invest our life savings, and I have to quit my job, and we're going to burn through savings pretty quick. And her question was, what happens if it fails? And I said, look, we'll be in bad shape. I mean, we'll have to sell some stuff. We might end up living with one of our parents in their basement, but, I think we should try it. And she said, I think you should too. And that could have gone two different directions. She could have said, well, that's too risky. My wife is an incredible supporter, incredible. And she stands, next to me like a rock. And that was a big moment. But that confidence came through these teachings of, I need to be willing to leave my comfort zone. So that was step one. Then we moved to Farmington. We started our business. We sold the business. And I was contemplating starting my second business, which that is the segment where you're talking about leaving your comfort zone, effectively walking away from your family and going, to what God called you to do and prosper. That was heavy because I will tell you, I was 100% burned out after selling our first company. I was done. And I even said it to my wife that I don't have it in me to do two of these. That was unbelievably exhausting. So we sat through these teachings, and it restored purpose to me. And it gave me confidence to do it again. And what PPI taught me is we are created to create. And that resonated with me. And what I felt was, to those that much is given, much is expected. And that I couldn't shake it. I tried. I didn't want to do it. I was tired. And there's two parts of this. One, I felt a calling and an obligation to use my blessings to do more. But I will tell you where that became a conviction that has never changed since then. The church came out, and you, Pastor Morgan, came out and said, we said we would never start a school, but we need to. And you did a capital raise, and you told a story where you were asking for a major gift giver, and somebody came up and walked up in the church or walked to you and gave you a check for some, at the time, absurd amount that just blew my mind that anybody would and could do that. I think it was something like $243,000 that somebody gave you. And it got my attention. And I went home and talked to my wife and said, we just sold our company, and I feel like we have a purpose and we need to do something. And so we did. And from that day forward, it's funny, I wasn't an emotional guy back in the day, but now I'm just apparently super emotional for things that mean something to me. But Pastor Morgan called me, and I don't remember if you FaceTimed or what, but you called me when you're standing up the first wall of the school. And man, it jacked me up. I got emotional because I pictured my then, 2-year-old walking into the school with her backpack on. And I will tell you this, I felt purpose. And that purpose filled me up. And I realized my energy was back. And since that day, I've probably worked harder, taken more risk, and my energy's a 10. And life has been good. It's been full of blessings, and I have purpose. And that purpose motivates me, and it refreshed everything about me. But to kind of put that into context, it renewed my mindset. And that renewal of my mindset created purpose, and that purpose is important to me. And I am so fortunate and blessed to be able to recognize that and use my skills and my blessings to do more. And I will tell you that got me, and that changed my life. And so the teachings you guys have, I have been fortunate enough to listen to. I want everybody to see this. That's why I'm like, Pastor Morgan, anywhere I'm at, can you guys fly here from across the U.S. to come to this school and teach this? It's important, and it means something. It really does.
Thank you, Dave.
And it's from the bottom of my heart, man. It just changed my life.
Yeah, and I hope our listeners know that I'm not saying that just for a personal kudos. I'm saying it because you talked about the principles. You talked about, Tim, as you're listening to that, what I hear David saying is, it's not just me and my talent and my interest in math and that I'm a hot rod, because on your own, yeah, you kind of are, but really big decisions in life, it wasn't until really God is in the mix with me, and it's a faith journey. By faith, I'm doing things that I think God is calling me to do, sometimes against my own sense of exhaustion. We will risk our resources in huge ways to do this, but I can't get away from the sense that God's leading us. Is that what you heard, Tim? I mean, what do you think about that?
Oh yeah. So, David, thanks for being so transparent, and sharing your story and where you struggled, renegotiating with the lady because of your values. What I hear you saying is I take risks because of my values. There's faith involved. I'm willing to get out of my comfort zone. You had to get out of your comfort zone. I laugh when I hear someone say, there's no faith involved in doing business. I'm like, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of faith involved in doing business. And listen, you're a role model for doing it the right way. And to me, that is so incredibly valuable to our listeners today. I want my daughters to hear your story, that kind of a thing. I want the people that I'm teaching and coaching, I want them to hear your story and be mentored by you, even if they never meet you in person, because it's that powerful.
Oh man.
Hey, David, let me, we're getting kind of close to the time when we need to wrap this podcast, but I want to ask you two questions, to respond to two questions. And the first one is this. When we look at people's lives and they have a number of things that they're involved in, sometimes they have multiple businesses, sometimes they're involved in charity. That's true of you. You have multiple businesses. You're involved in a number of charities. You care about public policy and trying to affect that. Very engaged in your family. So one of the things we find out is usually that the leader kind of has a central purpose, and everything they're doing comes back to, I'm serving that purpose. Would that be true of you? Do you have a sense of what your purpose is? You feel like, in everything I'm doing, this is basically what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I think once that conviction developed me, it became a mission, and that's what we're doing. And I mean, there are times where there's doubt, and there's times where there's fear, and there's struggles, and I'm not going to say dark times, because dark times implies, you're in a bad spot in life, but challenging times where you have to make a tough decision and say, we're still going forward. And so my faith really plays into that, because I really believe, that God will provide, and He always has, and I have no doubt in that. And I could tell you hours of stories where this happens. I mean, Stomp has been that story. Our number one supporter, Bill Hanslick, is a very strong man of faith, very plugged into the Christian world here in Denver, and he's been an unbelievable blessing. And the story of how I met him is unexplainable. It's just incredible. But I will tell you this. So I have decided to consciously be bold to go pursue these things. And I will tell you, to every listener out there, that it has leaned heavily, my boldness leans heavily on the people around me, and number one, my wife and my family. I lean on it, and they give me the confidence and the support to keep going, and they're always rooting for me. And that's big, because had my wife said, I don't want to take that risk anymore, or that we're set, we're good, we're safe is not my mission. I want to be mindful. I'm not a crazy risk taker, but that's not where the journey ends. And that's important. And so it is a statement, it is an intentional thing to go forward every single day. That's just important to us. And my wife recognizes it. She could complain and say, you work too much, but to me, this isn't work, this is purpose. And they're different.
Yeah.
So last question would be this. There's going to be people that watch this podcast from all around the world, at every economic level, at every age level, from young people to young adults, middle adults, senior adults. So a real variety of people, men and women, will watch this podcast. What would be your message to somebody who watches this podcast that you would think, I hope this is the message they walk away with?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that number one is that establishing an infrastructure is very critical, because that is the roadmap when things get tough that you default to. That is the roadmap. Even when we've achieved success, I've seen people go off the rails, whether it's a challenging time or successful time. A lot of times people achieve success and they become terrible humans, and it's sad, and they destroy their own lives. I've seen that same thing happen in dark times, where people don't have a strong infrastructure. So for me, pursuing that continuously and making that important to our family has been the guidelines for us. And the people that are in that circle keep me honest. So I'm not, I'd be foolish to say that I've got it all figured out. I just happen to have a lot of guardrails that carry enough about me that they speak the truth. And the other thing is, you got to find that one person, or that maybe many. I have many people in your life that will speak the truth. I can guarantee you, if I called my father and I told him I was doing something I shouldn't be doing, he'd speak the truth, because he cares about me. He'd say, I don't think you should do that, and I'll never change his mind. Yeah. And that's good. He always speaks the truth, and I have people in my life. So what I would tell people in this thing, in this podcast, is first, develop infrastructure, and that includes, what is your vision, what's important to you, and then surround yourself with people that keep you on that mission. Number two, when you find that conviction of purpose, follow it, because conviction is different than an idea. To me, once, and I don't know how to express conviction outside of the fact that you could beat me with a whip till I die. and my mind is not changing. That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
what it is.
The way I say the difference is if it's conviction, I cannot not do it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And feel right with myself and right with God if it's conviction.
That is exactly right. And I will tell you, this way of thinking took me from a point where I said, I'm done. I am burned out. I got nothing left and that was 10 years ago where I felt that. And since then, we've done 10 times the amount of work and 10 times the amount of giving and business growth, and they're not even on the same planet. And so you look at those two extreme ends to where I was on the verge of tapping out to where we are today, and I'm sad to think that might not have been an option. And so it's a story of really honestly following what I feel like I was called to do, and I feel the purpose. It's in my gut, it's in my soul, and I don't feel like I'm working. Like, this is fun for me. This is fulfilling, and the blessings and all of that come through this are just countless stories that I could honestly go all day with. It's a great story to tell.
I love it, man. I appreciate you being with us, David. Thank you for sharing your story and some of the stories within the story. They're encouraging and inspiring. Tim, let me ask you to kind of give us a kind of a quick, tight, after hearing all that, what's your takeaway?
Yeah. Well, one of my big takeaways, David, from hearing your story is that what the Bible teaches is true.
Yeah.
Solomon in Proverbs addresses almost every topic you just talked about today, and it's true. And to see someone put it into practice. So Jesus said this: you can build on sand or you can build on rock. And it's the man who builds on rock is a man who puts his teaching to practice, right? And so what I see in your story, David, is that a lot of people hear the principles and they hear the truth and they know that values are important, but you've actually put it into practice. And so thank you for doing that, for setting that example. And I really pray that many will follow your example and step out and do what God has called them to do.
Yeah, thank you, David. And David, I'll give you one last word. Anything you want to say for your wrap up and sign off?
Oh man, I could go all day. Thank you guys for putting this together and one, sharing your vision with me probably 15 years ago, and for keeping this connection alive. Our family loves you guys. We miss you guys. And we just wish the best for you. And I'm so happy to see all your postings of what you guys are doing with PPI. And literally, I see story after story of other people doing these things through your teachings. And it really is, I like how you say it's for the freedom that comes with this and the blessings that come with this. Just incredible. And so please always keep us in mind and share us the stories of everything you guys are doing. But most importantly, thank you for being good leaders in my life and good inspiration to us. And before I knew you personally, I was sitting in the audience wondering if my wife was giving you guys notes to teach the sermons just to me. You spoke right to my soul.
She was. Yeah.
There were times where I was ducking a little low thinking, oh, they're talking to me. But thank you guys, honestly, for everything you've done. It's really changed our life. And it's been a good, really good model for us to follow and learn and grow. So thank you for that.
You bet, man. Thank you. Well, everybody, this has been our empowerment podcast with John Morgan and Tim Hargrove and our special guest, David Gonzales. And we appreciate you being with us. We ask that you would share our podcast with your friends, and would you go to our website, which is at peopleprosper.org, to look at all of our great resources for your personal empowerment, and also look at how you can be involved with us in helping to empower the people in the world who need it the most. So until our next podcast, we want to sign off by giving you this blessing, and that is go forth and conquer. David, I know you're going to go forth and conquer. Tim, I know you're going to go forth and conquer, and I am too. So go forth and conquer. We'll see you next time.